Nobody panic. Nobody panic. Everything is under control. We totally have this in the bag. Oh boy, okay. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Ready? Rolling for curiosity. Hey, welcome back. Today we're looking at the themes and environments that within storytelling and the roles that they play. Is that a fair?
Yeah, and environmental storytelling.
Yeah, so how you can tell a story without saying the story effectively, painting a picture with the world.
Words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I guess if it's film, it'd be with visuals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. That I thought that was a very interesting thought. Whose idea was that, and what made you think of it?
Me, and mostly because these two love it.
Yeah.
And especially in video games, I know both of you really get a kick out of not having narrative lore dumps and things like that, and actually picking up bits of story as you go from things in the world and the environment. What is that classic Fallout one where it's just you find the guy on the toilet or whatever?
Yeah, so you always find these little scenes. It's in quite a lot of Bethesda games. It's not just the newer Fallouts, but you'll find these little scenes where there'll be a skeleton in a position in a place with something in their hand, and you know exactly what's happened because you can see the result of it. Yeah, so there's one in it's a bit dark, but there's one in, I can't remember if it's 4 or New Vegas, but there's a skeleton in a bath with a toaster. So you know that he's just done himself in at basically bang on the apocalypse. Couldn't time that much better, Shag, really.
Or did he have an illicit love affair with a toaster and it went horribly wrong?
Yeah. But then there's a couple of weird ones. There's one in Fallout 4 where there's a guy in a bath surrounded by mannequins, but all the mannequins have got machetes. And it's how did this occur? Why?
So you're kind of looking. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What did you say?
No, carry on.
So you're kind of looking at. I was thinking of this differently, but I like where you're going. You're kind of looking at using the world that the story's taking place in to have specific meaning.
Yeah.
As opposed to it simply being where the story's taking place.
Mm. So
I think it all adds to it, though.
Yeah, it's all part of the narrative thing, how it builds itself up. There's, don't keep sort of labouring the point, but in Skyrim there's one where
so you tell that he likes Bethesda games.
Yeah. Well, it's partly for this reason. So in Skyrim there's an encounter you can find quite early on where there's a caravan that's been torched, and you're like, oh, okay, why is this all on fire? A bit weird. Loot bodies wander on. Then later on you find that dragons are coming back. So it was a dragon that attacked the caravan, and you're like, well, now I have context for that. And then you keep stumbling across things, and you're like, yeah, that looks like a dragon attack, or this is something that's happened because of the Civil War.
Right.
So there's all these little bits and pieces, and
rather than, and this could be attributed in a book, or a movie, or a game. But rather than being you enter a cave, and the cave is dark, and there are bodies on the floor. You enter the cave, and it's mostly dark, but somehow the light hits the specific body in this specific way.
Yeah, I think it's those little things that make worlds feel alive as well. Whereas it can be
or have purpose.
You describe a cave, it's dark. Or you describe a cave, there's scratching on the walls where someone was, and then your mind fills in the rest. They must be trying to get out, or they're trapped. And then you're like, okay, so why were they trapped? And it kind of just adds layers to that, other than, by the way, it's supposed to be spooky, guys.
Yeah.
It's horror, isn't it?
There's
the
a
thing that's scary is the setup.
I don't know if great is the right word. There's a great sequence in Critical Role, and I want to say it's season 2, but it could be season 1. They all blur together. But it's a moment that was memed to death because of how frustrated Matt got. And it was a situation that was they were in solve the crime mode, and there was they enter a room, in which they're looking for clues as to what happened because someone they know or care about is missing. And it's it's a jail cell, and the only thing, or an office or something, and in this room, Matt's like describing everything that's in it, and he makes the mistake of pausing very specifically on the chair in the center of the room, that was only there as a tool to let people know that someone came in and someone came out because the chair had been knocked over.
Yeah.
But because he spent so much time describing the chair, they spent 2 hours
It's
investigating
really,
the chair.
really fine line to walk. The amount of times I've done that with you guys, where I'm like, I've given too much detail about the wrong thing, so you latch on to the wrong thing.
What's the It's like it's not a red herring, but you can smell there's been a fish.
Yeah.
That's the way I describe it.
Yeah, there's like the door that you describe and the door that you say is there but don't describe. Which door are they going to take? There's a...
Yeah. That's
well, it's like I assume you're all caught up on the podcast, Julian.
Yeah.
Well, let's explain it anyway. Yeah. So there's...
Tell people that are listening that have not listened to the podcast yet, so they want to listen to the podcast.
Oh, yeah. So there's one episode where we find a stone door.
Oh, no.
And there is an awful lot of stuff around the door that indicates that there's a puzzle that needs to be solved. And we went, no, there wasn't an awful lot of stuff around. He literally told us that was what it was. Yes, there was that. There was the statue. One of the statues said, "Don't touch it, you'll die." And we were like, "Well, I don't really know if that's really worth the risk." And then the door was just, after 20 minutes, half an hour of deliberating, the door was just unlocked. So we just pushed it open.
Were you guys? I was talking to my wife about this, and I may have given credit to the wrong show, so I apologize. Did you guys have a sequence that had like the one guy only lies and one guy only tells the truth?
It was
utter bullshit the entire time.
Was
that you?
And I was just I loved it because it was like, okay, the two gargoyles, but they're actually trolls.
Yeah,
they're actually
they're trolling the situation. Yes, that was you guys. I apologize. I gave the wrong show credit to my wife. That was you guys.
We can't take full credit for like that whole like.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
But the whole like. But actually, it doesn't even matter.
Yeah,
I believe it was Labyrinth that did it.
Yes, it was. It was Labyrinth. Well, it was Labyrinth that did it in a story. I think it was a classic.
It's a classic trope, but I love to try and upend tropes because I know that both of you are very up on your like what's pop culture and stuff like that, and you're like, I like to subvert that because it's funny for me to see them frustrated sometimes.
Like the fucking warehouse. Oh, go on. That's another one with environment, definitely.
Yeah, I think that wasn't anything we ever recorded, was it?
That was just a one shot.
They were investigating some murders going on in nights where they believed it to be a werewolf, something that was changing shape. And they end up going down to the docks where this particular building was supposedly haunted, where it wasn't. It was a person who, on the full moon, turned into a warehouse.
That's awesome!
I think again, that you got us to like look round, and it was just like nothing's out of place. Yeah, we were in this normal house, and it was like, what?
Or there's I was thinking recently, I don't know when, that I think annoyance should be a type of damage that a character can take.
We often do psychic damage.
Yeah.
One of it.
Yeah.
It's like, we voluntarily take. You know what? I'm taking some for that.
Yep. That's awesome.
I think there's so as well for like putting your own character through that because you're like, yeah, they would not. They just, I hate that.
I'm gonna broaden out a little bit because we've been using examples in whether it's video game or tabletop. We've been using role playing as an example.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll pull back a little bit scope wise because I think there's a little bit that I think this is part of like I don't know where you guys stand on it, but like action for action's sake versus action that tells a plot in a movie or a TV show. So like now don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of like Jackie Chan highlight reels.
Yes.
But if I'm watching a Jackie Chan highlight reel that is the length of a movie that Jackie Chan is in, I stop after 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because the context is what builds the reason for those scenes that are so iconic. And there are a lot of movies that or TV shows in which the action is taking place because of consequence, but the action that's being depicted has no weight. Because it's like, and it's not I am all for the balletic effect of visceral fights. Like, that's its own cinematography. But there's still a difference between this being like a beautiful display on scene and the beautiful display on scene telling part of the story as it's happening.
Yeah, the thing that immediately jumps to my mind when you say that is the Netflix Daredevil series, where they always have like that classic hallway fight scene, but it does still tell a story of he is getting so like beaten up,
exhausted,
and kind of like it informs the rest of the show, because it's like it's environmental storytelling in the way that you can see that he's only human and he is wearing down and getting.
What's really cool, I think this went over a lot of people's heads, is that same fight scene took place 3 times later in the same season. With him doing different things because he had grown as a character. So there's at the end when he has his actual suit, he enters the exact same scene, and instead of fighting his way through, he breaks a light, everything goes dark, and he just walks through because he had gained the.
It shows character growth, and it kind of it pushes everything forward. So that's important, I think.
Have you seen the oneer of that fight scene? That was an homage to The Raid. Have you seen The Raid? Have you?
Yes, that was
a great film.
Great movie.
Yeah,
that's a film
you've seen it.
I've seen The Raid.
For context, I think there's 3 movies you've ever seen:
The Menu, The Raid,
and something else beginning with The Thing.
But the Raid is, for those who don't know, is I believe yes. No. I know it was built to highlight Salat as a martial art. Right. That's the style they're using in the fights. But it's basically a whole movie telling a story of the Daredevil fight scene.
And it somehow still manages to have a plot.
So, and this is the difference. And this is why, like, a number of other shows have there is a similar fight scene that followed one sequence beat for beat in Arrow in the first season, in which he's going through a hallway, and like you can watch it frame for frame, where like he does like the triple head beat on like a wall before walking around the corner, in Arrow it looked cool. It was in the Raid, it was part of a story in which every movement was part of the character. Like it, I think that makes a big difference. And I've watched a couple of videos that talk about like watching the Raid ruined action movies for me now, because it's something that you can't unlearn once you've seen it for the first time. Where it's kind of like watching a movie or a TV show that has wide coverage of a fight scene versus cuts between actors, and realizing why they're cutting, even though they've trained for 6 months on this scene, and it's because the people performing it aren't good at it. Or like was it Jackie Chan's stunt team famously uses wide shots for their choreography, but does double taps on the cuts. So like they'll do, it'll be a wide a sequence with a wide shot, an impact, and then it cuts to the impact a second time. Not the movement, but the person getting hit twice. Right. So that it looks like that was more powerful than something else. Those are things that, like, when you see it, you go, that's cool, and then you go to another movie and it's not there and something's missing.
Yeah, it's like almost jarring.
Exactly. And the Raid did that for a whole genre of films that now are trying to catch up. Because
I feel like going back to like we were saying, like Arrow did it almost by beat for beat. I feel like watching that, all of the fight scenes in that weren't supposed to tell a story. They were supposed to just make you go, "Oh, that guy's cool."
Yeah, exactly. Wait, and
Yeah.
I'll say there's nothing wrong with that. There is a
because
place
that's
for it.
still, yeah, there's still like there's a plot reason for that as well. Like realistically,
Exactly. Yeah.
this guy's trying to be cool. Or is
Because
cool.
because otherwise you could have not used the raid as an homage. Like you could have done or you didn't have to do a one-er there, or like the fight scene, like you chose a specific thing that that sequence is telling him, like, oh, this person's a psychopath. Like that's yeah. There's I forget the movie. Do you guys most of these clips that I'm referencing I think are coming from me watching other people reacting to fight scenes now. But there's a couple films in which are famously used wide shots in fight scenes that follow the game like a one-on-one fighter game, in which like there's the balletic combos of like, yeah, we're getting a bunch of hits in, but like as someone's like winning, the camera sways towards that person. They don't zoom in. They just like and they're not like necessarily going back and forth in the hallway too much, but like the camera moves further down a hallway as two people are fighting on the side of the person who's losing, so that it looks like the other person's gaining ground. And then as they make a comeback, the camera moves back. But they never cut from the action.
Yeah.
And
so it's more like visually telling the story of
exactly.
Where's it going? Thing, yeah.
And I think that's something that's really cool, because you're using the environment or the visual environment of your setting dressing as a character in the story in a way that, again, if you then go watch another scene where that doesn't happen, something's missing. Like it's.
I always notice it as well with there's a specific like trope. I can't remember where it originated from, but it's like the ninja trope, where it's like if there's one ninja, it's a boss fight. It's going to be hard. It's highlighting how ridiculously like tough this battle is going to be. If there's 100 ninjas, it's just to highlight how cool the one guy is.
Right, or to demonstrate the level their character's at.
Yeah, like inverse property of like
in Kill Bill.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no worry. If there's 100.
Because it's like there's only one power level. It's split between however many enemies there are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and kind of like the amount of like, I know this is probably a cut that you guys won't get, but like Dragon Ball Z was famous for having one guy that was cool throughout the whole of Dragon Ball.
Quite a large power level, I believe.
Over 9,000.
Well, was it?
Eventually.
Was he the one looking for Dragon Balls?
Yeah, he was at one point.
Oh, hey!
he should have just looked between the dragon's legs, honestly.
Yeah! High five.
He was like he was the strong, cool guy in the original Dragon Ball series, and in Dragon Ball Z, it was always him that got absolutely beaten up by every new enemy to show how more powerful they were.
Yeah,
like, that was the cool guy from before. We kicked the crap out of him. This new guy's, it's like, like you've got to increase that power level of like
and
every
escalate
time
the stakes. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Anime power creep is mad.
And it was just become a meme. This one poor guy's like, please stop. I'm only a normal human.
They use the same tropes in pro wrestling. When you have a feud going and the two people aren't fighting each other because they're equal, that they have them fighting people that are fed to them to show their equal power levels.
It is a way of like storytelling without saying it. You're like, look how strong they are because they can beat this person that's supposedly strong.
Right. Or you have them in like a tag match, but like their teammate gets injured, so it's actually a handicap match. Now they're taking two people on at once, and that shows how strong they are. Like it's I find that really interesting, all of that stuff, because it is kind of, it's a way of saying what you're saying without saying it. and I try and do that like when we play D&D and things, but it's hard sometimes because sometimes you it's hard to get subtext across when you're just trying to describe things.
It's quite easy to when you know what you're trying to say in your own head, but you're trying to not say it.
Yeah.
Like, no one's picking up on it, and you're like, I need to feed you another crumb, but it's quite hard to get because
which
you eventually
crumb
get to a
it
point.
is.
Yeah, that's it. You don't know which one they're going to pick up on.
Yeah,
'cause-
like
Yeah.
I said before, like it's always the wrong thing that you because
Mm.
you're trying to dance around it maybe too much sometimes. And I feel like in writing and movies, it's a lot easier to do that because it's easier to lampshade. This is the thing. I can literally zoom in on it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like especially with like film or like TV, something that springs to my mind is Breaking Bad. I don't know if you guys have seen, but the opening of most episodes is really slow,
Yeah.
and a lot of the time there's no dialogue, and it's just showing you sort of see. Sometimes the scene won't even make sense yet, and
Yeah.
it won't for a few
Yeah.
episodes, but it really sets up
Yeah.
stuff. Like I can't remember what season it was. But essentially, I'm going to do spoilers because that show's been out ages. If you haven't watched it, it's your fault.
Yeah.
Carry on.
There's essentially
It's Malcolm in the Middle with drugs, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
events that happen that the characters go through, which causes someone they know who's an air traffic controller to take his eye off the ball, and a plane crashes into another plane. So all throughout the season, they're showing like this, just like random debris in people's back gardens, and you're just like, what's that got to do with anything?
Yeah.
And then
It
it
like slowly
he
pieces
builds that
Okay.
that's
together.
what happened.
I love that when there's like a slow reveal over like a whole season for something, and you just get that like,
Oh.
Yeah, it's that
Yeah.
you've got to go. Oh, now I get what that
Fucking
is.
Yeah.
Mindhunter. Have you watched
I
that?
haven't watched that.
Oh, mate, do you know, I'm so gutted they're not doing another season of that because like this whole, I can't remember if it was over the 2 seasons or just the second one, but they were building up.
We never warned everybody. We're on opposite ends of the oceans.
We are, yeah.
So the shows
Yeah.
and movies they may reference may not be the shows and reference I know.
I don't know. I think
Yeah, that's a
lot,
really good point.
a lot of our media does come from
Yeah,
America.
Mindhunter's Netflix.
Oh, cool.
It's,
Awesome.
David Lynch.
I know that
I
name.
don't know, I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
You're the only one that's
Yeah,
gonna know.
directed by David Lynch.
No, I
Yeah.
think it's real. I think you're
It's
making it up.
maybe that's why there's not another season because I've run out of imagination. But like the whole second season, they built up to this serial killer that they were then presumably was going to be the antagonist for the next season, which is not happening.
Right.
And it's like the last scene of the second season is him, and you're like, oh yeah, it was him the whole time, and then you're like, oh, they're not going to get him because
Oh,
they didn't
so
catch
you
him
won.
for 2004 anyway. So well, no, because at that point, I don't think he'd actually killed anyone yet. Because the whole show is about FBI profiling serial killers and developing the methods to profile
Oh.
serial killers. So I think it was trying to show his descent into the point where he's going to kill.
Right.
Oh,
serial
and become
killer.
a serial killer. That makes sense.
Yeah,
That's
and
cool.
then it was going to be like season 3 was going to be
That must,
him.
a show like that must embody exactly what we're talking about, where you have to show.
yeah, exactly.
literally,
Yeah,
Well, the thing is,
You really
sometimes if you don't show and you do tell, it's so
Hmm.
cheesy and forced.
Yeah.
Like I was watching something the other day. I think it was Schitt's Creek. Which overall, fantastic show, fantastic
Yes.
writing.
Yeah.
But there was one moment where it was like, "Oh, do you remember the thing?" And they're like, "Yeah, the thing." When it was so forced. I was like, "Oh, come on, you could have done that better."
The example for me that I always think of, and this is very British because it's Doctor Who.
Okay.
doesn't get more British than that.
The Christopher Eccleston first series when they restarted it. All the
I
episodes.
think that's the only season I've ever seen.
It's fantastic.
and
Yeah.
honestly, it's probably the best season
It's
that they
one- it's
did.
definitely
Oh,
one.
I don't
I
know.
do not like Doctor Who because I'm kidding. Okay.
That's it. The show.
Perfect, it's perfectly valid. to be fair.
Oh, it's
Um,
gone on too far.
Yeah, it
But-
has, yeah.
Every episode in that season doesn't seem connected because they're all in different time periods,
Mm.
different people. But the way that it brings it all together under like a common thing for that finale was just fantastic
Bad Wolf
writing.
thing, yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was so well done, and I don't. It's one of those things that how do you do it again once you've done a season? Like,
Yeah.
Right.
How?
They almost, I feel like they wrote that first season of Rebooted Who like it wasn't going to get any more.
yeah,
Like that was going to be it. They were just going to reboot it for a season because British TV shows tend to do like 6 episodes and then that's that.
I'm aware of
Yeah,
that problem.
don't really bother anymore.
I don't know. It's a problem and it's not a problem because sometimes you tell the story that needs to be told and then you end
Yeah.
You don't
it's
make
brilliant
13 seasons
before
looking at you,
binging
The
was a
Office.
thing.
But then you get something like Luther that was like the first season was like 6 episodes, and
Yeah.
then the next one was 6, and then it went to like 2.
Yeah, that
Like,
happens
Oh,
quite a
no.
lot.
yeah.
Torchwood did that as well. They started doing like specials and
Oh yeah, and then Torchwood went downhill when the Americans got hold.
That's fair. That's fair. Have you
I feel like-
have you guys I don't know what's on your have you guys seen either Knives Out or Glass Onion? Is that on your
Both.
side of the pod?
And-
I've seen Glass Onion, but I haven't seen the first one.
That's
haven't
okay.
seen
You don't,
either.
technically speaking,
Oh.
you don't
They're
have to
probably
see
the same film, though, right?
No.
you don't have to see them like in either order. but I
They're
will say
not.
Knives Out is
the only
the
the only thing
better
that
movie.
ties them together is that there's the detective or inspector played by Daniel Craig is solving a mystery. The mystery is different. The casts are different. But that
But it's
that's Ryan Johnson, I believe.
Yeah.
It's a whodunit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Essentially.
It is,
But-
but it's a whodunit in which nothing on screen is ever an accident in a manner
Oh, no,
in which
no,
you
no.
cannot predict.
honestly, that is a film that when I watched it again, I was like, wow.
Whoa!
Like,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like it's almost better on a second watch, even though it's like you know every twist and turn, you know exactly what's going to happen,
It's-
and you're like,
yeah.
oh wow, now I can look at it from a technical standpoint of
Yeah.
like, how did you manage to pull this off? And, like,
Exactly.
have nobody like be any the wiser. That is that perfect level of kind of like all the clues are there, they're all
Yep.
right in front of you, if you can just see them.
It's
Yep.
the magician, isn't it? Going, oh, watch this while
Mm.
something's happening over
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
That is such a, it's like a very like everything Sherlock Holmes and stuff like that. Like anytime they do that, it is that classic thing of
The problem.
yeah, he goes the thing at
Yeah.
the end, but the clues are there, but
My
not.
my only problem with Sherlock Holmes and mysteries that work around the person's level of intelligence being higher than the perceived audience is that there's always a bit in which they technobabble a spot that was not actually there.
Yeah.
Like if you look at, this might not be the best interpretation of Sherlock Holmes, but if you look at I think it's just called Sherlock Holmes, but the 2008-2009 movie.
The Robert Downey Jr. one.
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
I love as a movie, but there's
Discombobulate.
yeah, he solves the movie getting all the puzzles, getting all the clues, but a bunch of the clues are left for him to solve, not the audience, because
Yeah.
they perceive his intelligence as like a superpower. So they remove that from the screen, and there's a montage of things that are explained that you thought were regular but weren't, and that bugs
Yeah.
me.
Sherlock
to
Holmes
be
TV
fair-
series had the same problem.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
is something I don't like. But like, I remember, I think it was an Arthur Conan Doyle like thing that I was reading. They were saying like, it's easy to make someone seem like they have a perceived high intelligence
Yeah, 'cause
because
they
you
know the
literally,
answer.
you know the answer and you work backwards and you just pepper the things in you need. So it
Yeah.
is just like it's there if you want to see it, but
Mhm.
none of it's going to make sense unless you have the answer. So it looks intelligent because you have the answer.
Yeah.
But realistically, you could never know that until you know
But
it.
there's definitely a skill, and I think I've only seen Glass Onion, but I think it did it well. Was of showing those things without giving it away. So obviously,
Yeah.
it's bold.
It's
It's-
bold,
it's-
but it's
it-
like one of
It
those
was the
things
first.
that
Sorry, you go.
it's interesting because it's a real skill to be able to draw the eye to what you want to see while also not saying exactly what it is. It's
And keeping
Yeah.
it interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, it was the first time I saw cinematically things that where things in frame weren't the only thing you were supposed to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Because normally if there is a clue that's supposed to be like context, they'll even if it's like in the corner of like a scene, it won't be blurry or behind something else. And this was the first time in which they let the moment of the scene still be center, but everything else that's being shot is a thing as well. I
Yeah.
thought it was really cool. And I bring that up because I don't know if it's available on any of the things you have streaming wise. Have you heard of Poker Face?
No.
Okay, I have
Is
no
that
idea
like
if
a
it's
game show.
No.
No? I must be thinking of something else.
Yeah, Poker Face is a TV show that in the States aired on the Peacock streaming app or streaming service, which is from NBC.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
the
yeah.
fan. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is by Ryan Johnson, and he released it like it was started airing I want to like a month or two after Glass Onion dropped on Netflix.
Okay.
And it is also a whodunit, but it's episodic.
Oh, okay.
And it is, if you want the sensation of watching Glass Onion, but a new version of it every week, I
Oh no,
highly
I'm gonna have
recommend.
to find a way to watch that.
It
Sail
is-
the high seas.
It is so cool. It's basically I think the first episode was either really detail oriented or like a 2-episode pilot. So like instead of being 4 to 5 minutes, it wasn't like an hour and a half or whatever, or an hour and a half, hour and a half. And you get to the end of the pilot episode and go, well, that's the end of the movie. Cool. And then the show starts. So like the first episode is one giant mystery that is feels like you're missing all of the context and you're gaining context as the episode's going, and then it ends and you're like, great, this is now the end, but it's not the end because there's one more scene, and the show goes from what you think it is to the main character who you don't realize is the main character until halfway through, being on the run because of the consequences in the first one, and in being on the run, she is bumping into new towns and spots, and she has an untapped neurological capability of telling lies and a compulsion to know why someone is lying about something that she thinks doesn't matter. So each episode is her being on the run in a new town with new people, bumping into someone lying about something they caused, like some version of a murder, and her having to figure out why this person is lying before she can leave. So there's the tension of her being chased for why she's being on the run. But each time there's a murder of like, ooh, I can't just leave this alone. So you get a fresh crop of like everything. Like there's one, I remember like 3 or 4 episodes in being like being trained to know, like, I know they're talking, but I'm looking in like the corner of like every like point of view of being like, oh, there's a dog barking. When's that dog gonna come back? The person driving by picked up
Like
a plank
the
of
Chekhov's
wood.
gun of
Yeah, someone like everything. You're looking for every single Chekhov's gun in every. I highly recommend it. I don't know if you can find it, but yeah,
I will try my best because I brought myself up on like just reading like detective thrillery.
Yeah,
I love all that stuff. Or like the amount of pulpy short fiction books I just buy from secondhand bookshops all the time. Oh, yeah. Oh, I love those.
Yeah, I highly recommend that.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. So when every time I've found myself in a spot where I realize I've seen, read, or heard something that now when I don't see it, it changes how I view stuff. I try to incorporate the lesson I learned into what I do storytelling wise.
Yeah.
Is that okay? That was based on my question. Is like, is that something that you guys try to do? And if so, do you think you have examples?
Definitely try to. I can't think of any examples off the top of
That's
my
fair.
head.
It's on the spot.
It's probably one of those things you do so naturally you don't. It's almost like not conscious.
Yeah, it's like
just
you're
become part of
subconsciously
your
like adding
repertoire.
that to the repertoire.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I'll put that one in the box.
It's also just that nothing's original anymore idea.
No,
Of
You're
course
just
not.
taking other things and tweaking it to fit your.
I think there's a skill to that as well.
Yeah,
though,
there
where you're
definitely is.
like, okay, there is nothing new or original. But how do we make something that seems new and original by
definitely.
putting my personal slant on it? Because I mean,
Right.
a lot of the things we do are homages of things
Oh,
that I
you
like.
love that word, don't you?
Yes, it's not me shamelessly
rip-off.
thieving things. It's an homage.
Uh-huh.
But also, I added a dragon.
I agree. Well, I do
By the
believe. I
way,
do believe.
every story benefits from a
Yeah.
trial.
I truly believe that there is a level of a story or unique story that every individual on this plane of existence has and is capable of telling. And I think the homages come from how do you tell your story through something that's palpable for someone else's ears, eyes, or what have you. And I actually heard this from, he's American. Do you know Kevin Smith?
Yeah. That did
the
Clerk.
filmmaker, comic book writer, podcaster. Yeah, he has
Silent
said, Silent Bob. Talks a lot for someone who plays a silent character. He has said on a number of occasions in things that I've listened to that whenever people are like, "What should I do for my story? I want to get into filmmaking. I want to write a script. What should I do?" And his advice is always, "No one's had your experiences. Tell your story of your experiences. Just it's not a biography. It's just it's your emotions, your thoughts, your growth. Tell that story, and then tell it again with different characters, and then tell it again with science fiction, and then tell it again because
Honestly,
that's the one
like,
thing no one else can take from you."
Yeah, we could have all consumed the exact same media the entirety of our lives and think differently about it, take different lessons from it, read different subtext out of it. So we color everything we consume with our own lens.
Mm-hmm.
So when we retell that, it is different. It's going to be different for everyone.
We've all consumed a lot of exactly the same stuff.
Yeah.
We've shown each other to it, but that doesn't mean we don't all sway towards different things more.
Yeah, because we all like different things more or less, or we might resonate more with a different character or a different style of thinking or writing, which I think we probably do, don't we? We all go gravitate towards our own things that we like, even if we do read the same things, watch the same things, play the same games.
Yeah. I'm gonna bring it back to I think the examples you guys brought up in the very beginning of this as something that I picked up. I think this is the first time I realized I had to learn something by watching other stories and been like, oh, that's a thing that I don't see everyone doing, but I can do now. And it was actually the first D&D game I ever homebrewed and ran myself. And it's a one shot of, I think I've talked to you guys about the story before, but, or the one shot. It's a one shot that I built to play with people that have never played D&D before, so that as I make friends, in theory, I haven't yet, but as I make friends, I have something that I can present as hey, let's do this thing. Don't worry about how characters run out. Don't worry about the lore of this game, or you enjoy hanging out with me. And these people will all hang out. This will be a great time. So it was designed to be that type of one shot. Yeah. But the thing that I took storytelling wise was making sure that there's a sense of urgency, a thing for the characters to chew on with it that is not combat, and that the decisions the characters make have consequences that they themselves have to overcome. Which are all things that I know when I write out a story or plan a thing that isn't being played, that I see a lot of times. It's the exact opposite of a random encounter chart, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also an improv DM, so I don't actually have a monologue written out or the exact situation that's going to take place, but I have ambiance, I have tone, and I have clues.
Yeah.
And so in the one shot, there a group of however many people are playing that wake up on a ship that is just sailing in the ocean, and there's no sounds on the ship because everyone is dead, and they don't. And they don't know how they got on that ship. They were unconscious and they have woken up on the ship, and the only character backstory they have is the last thing they remember doing. That's their one backstory trope. And they don't even know each other. Just wake up in the cabin of a thing. And I laid everything out so that there was ways to understand the situation regardless of skill checks, so that characters could talk. There is no other NPCs except for one in case they got completely lost, that he would either pop up in a cellar locked away as a prisoner to give them context, or if they were not having trouble, he wouldn't be there ever. But so there was no other characters on the ship, except there was a ghost because the boat was haunted, and that was that's how everybody died. And there's a timer on the ship, so like you start at day, and when it goes to night, the ghost activates. So they're running around the ship finding clues on like, here's a note from the admiral of like what the ship is for. Here's a thing of notes of like why they were captured, or not them specifically, but like how they got here. And on the whole time, the boat smells like rotten things because there's bodies lying around, and every single body was laid out in a manner in which you could tell who died when and how. So you could solve why people were dying and how they killed, which would lead to, like, even if you never realized the ghost was like tied to it, or found like the haunted cutlass that makes the ghost attack you first. Like, if you never found any of that, you could just wander around the boat going, "Oh, we were shanghaied. Someone drugged us. We are now we are now headed to the Royal Harbor to be enslaved as mercenaries. There's no one on the ship, and people are gonna think we killed everybody." That's where you're at. And then it goes dark, and the ghost pops out. But
that's great environmental storytelling
like
as well.
Yeah.
That is everything that we've been talking about. Like,
and
that's
all
because
that,
you haven't really got to tell the story. You let the players
exactly.
The players then tell you what the story is.
All I do is direct and narrate the environment.
Yeah.
And they're talking to each other. They like if one, and there is stuff like if they find the cutlass that is cursed, which means if no one ever touches the cutlass, the ghost leaves them alone. It just hangs out in the cabin where the cutlass is. But if you touch the cutlass, it goes out with bare skin. It goes after the last person to touch the cutlass. If you're holding the cutlass, it tries to possess you, and then that's where all the murders came from. It would possess a person, kill that person, or there'd be a fight, and the winner of that fight would then pick up the cutlass, and then there'd be another fight, and there was a logbook of like the item being rare and the fact that it's cursed, which was separate from where the captain was who had died last, and like there's a treasure trove of distractions, and all of that means is realizing you have to do something to get off the boat before it crashes in the harbor and you're arrested for being murderers. But I built it as a game to encourage people to look up from their sheet and talk to each other because it was a social game. But I think I realized after the fact that there's a bunch of storytelling elements that I took for granted that I learned along the way. I don't know if that makes sense. That Anyway, that's my example of where I've realized I utilized environmental storytelling. It's a very specific, long example.
But that is a really good example as well. Because I mean, it's something I think I struggle with as well. Like there'll be after episodes we've recorded that we're like, I didn't really like describe that well enough. I didn't give you enough detail. I didn't give you the clue for you to find.
Yeah.
I need to give you the context for you to go, oh, we need to look around. We need to find something. Things like that for the players to go, what do we do here? How do we tell the story? Because we're the people in the world that are actually pushing this forward, not the DM. The DM is there to be the world more than anything else, and just kind of like, yes, I'm bouncing back what you're giving to me, and it's difficult to walk that line because I know you were saying you're more of an improv DM. Like, I walk a weird line with that where sometimes I will write a monologue for a character, but I'm quite happy to never use it if it never comes up.
Yeah, I agree. I tend not to have word for word monologues. I have moments of impact.
Yeah, I kind of like, I try and bullet point like what their key motivators or the things they want to say are. Which is why sometimes it comes across, I'm like, no, I've said that weird. Like I need to re-say that. But
I do that. But I do that for like when they enter a room. So I'll have like, depending on what mission they're on or what story is being told within their characters, I'll have points of emphasis that are to illustrate how they are feeling, where they are, what's happening, more than a monologue on lore. Because my goal is to keep them present. I also I focus very heavily on giving minor things for them to overcome that create situations that are dire later on. My favorite examples are actually the most intense game I've ever ran, where the mission was, technically speaking, to cross the street, pick up a bag, and go home. And right.
Quick event, just 20 minutes. And
and it took 2 hours, and they started a war. But to be fair, they were giants in the land of Gulliver's Travels.
Okay, yeah.
So their bag was giant to them, or was regular size to them, but a monolith to the tiny people who had built a temple around it. So they literally had to take 2 steps through a forest to bend down to pick up their bag that was now underneath concrete in like a pyramid. But along the way, they failed their dexterity checks, so they're gigantic, and stepped on houses and buildings, and a war started against them. Yeah.
It makes me think of the Futurama episode where Bender's got the whole entire city on.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You were doing well until everybody died.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know we were talking about Blades and Dark. Was that this week or last week?
It was this week.
Was that this week?
That was it.
But
Shit. No, it wasn't. It was last week.
Was it last week? Okay.
It was last week.
The consequences thing, I struggle with giving those little consequences, and that is a system that I really find useful because it literally lampshades and you have to think about it. Oh, you succeed with a consequence.
Yeah.
What is that consequence? Let's spitball this.
Break your shin.
Yeah, you do manage to take that guy down, but he also shivs you in the gut.
You both fall off the building at the same time.
Yeah.
Tension moment. Oh, what are you gonna do now? Kind of thing.
I'm gonna have you two take your earphones off so you can't hear this bit.
Us?
Yes. Sorry, you can't see where I'm pointing. Okay. So my favorite thing. I want you to leave our reps and guess. The best thing to do, in my opinion, for creating tension through basically a random encounter is to have it be a simple encounter, and then basically have an if-then statement ready that is, what do they choose, that actually has the point of what happens later in that same moment, or down in the next episode or game or whatever. But the most powerful thing is the things they don't choose to do.
Yeah.
So if you put in a situation where they avoid fighting and talk their way out of a situation and then move on, later in that episode or the next episode, there's violence that took place because they didn't stop that encounter from happening.
Yeah.
And then they have to come back around.
I feel like I do a very slow play of that, especially in the podcast where it's kind of like those consequences they don't see for 30 episodes.
Yeah. Because you're moving in one line living right now. But that's my favorite thing is I want them to be afraid. Is using using the random encounter that isn't supposed to be a boss fight to create inner character story, rather than me going, "Hey, this is where you should go because it's what you have," and then it becomes personal because they're like, "Oh fuck, we didn't do that," or they do kill these things, and it turns out they were neutral or not evil in the first place, and it was a misunderstanding.
That's normally the way that things go.
Yeah, exactly. And then you end up being on the wrong side of the conflict, but it's still, And then you're standing around going, "I think I've heard them say this. Are we the bad guys in this scenario?" Yes, you are. Okay.
Almost every time.
Your muff's off.
We'll come back, aren't we? Right, okay.
Nothing. Don't worry about it.
I was waiting for you to prompt us now.
Me just
I was just assuming it was like, and how would they react? And you're like, well, it's like this.
It was so that we can share ideas that aren't obvious when he puts them into your campaign.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't worry if they were obvious or not, we'd have missed them.
That's actually what we were talking about. It's,
It was just like, so how do you survive working with
How do you find better players?
Yeah.
Wow. I'm not here because I'm a player. I'm here because I know how the buttons work.
There you go. Last question. This is actually specific to your guys' podcast. Your guys' show / games. Yeah. How many times? Without this might be spoilers. I might cut it out. How many times have you had to alter the characters you are playing due to circumstances?
As per the yeah, okay, yeah. Only the once.
What do you,
yeah.
Was it only the once?
The full change. I mean, that's a big spoiler.
Yeah,
But
that's
No. That's why I don't want to give up that moment.
Yeah.
I'm just,
But I think our characters have gone through stuff that's almost that. That's forced them to do a bit different.
Early on, when I think it was within like the first 10 or so episodes.
It was 11, I think, or 12.
It was at Karlov's, I think, when things started.
it was
before
at the
that in the keep. Yeah.
Oh yes, yeah.
When one of the characters does fully fail all the death saves and everything, that was cool as a character moment because we used it to color the stuff that came later. When they got to like the gnome, Tinkerdown and stuff like that.
Was that when you guys were trying to stop the Wicker Man from lighting on fire?
It was just after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
When
see, proof I listen.
Yeah.
I love as well that someone that doesn't listen after context. So there's the Wicker Man. There's the keep.
You know what's really funny? Because you speak in slang I don't understand half the time. I had just been when I listened to that string of episodes, I was playing through Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And there's a lot of lore terminology that you guys were using that I had learned like the day before from that game. I didn't know what a Wicker Man was until then, and then it popped up in your campaign like the next day.
Right. Well, I think it's quite a famous folklore thing over here.
It is, but I just didn't know it.
Well, it's a big horror film.
There's that as well.
Yeah.
But also, where we actually live is very much the territory that Vikings invaded.
That
England
makes it's also where the game was taking place. So that makes
a lot
sense.
of our history around here is based on that. So it's quite
I suppose it's weird. I never really thought about that, but like again, like when we're talking about our own experiences coloring things, like a lot of like the folklore and like mythology that I enjoy is probably a lot more local than I feel it.
Yeah. Here we are in peak Viking invader Anglo-Saxon territory where we are now.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
well,
so
I mean, like,
interesting. Yeah.
Even when we look at the, I guess, mainstream role-playing games, whether they're video game or tabletop, a lot of them are based around the not Tolkien lore, which is based on the Anglo-Saxon.
It's all very
European.
Western. Yeah. But I mean, I feel like it would be weird if I was like, "Oh, this is a Jersey Devil that you're fighting." Like for us, that would be weird. Like for you in America, it might be like, "Oh, well, that's a bit of folklore that we pick up." Although obviously America's
it would not be actually. That would I think specifically like the U.S. is weird with folklore. Because
you are very like big
we have regional stuff that is regional within our own country that is so it's such a large land base and such a melting pot. Like the most I can think of is like the Southern West is where you get all the Western stories. And the like the Gulf, like I'm gonna name. Louisiana area, which was originally French and then taken over by the U.S. That has its own culture as well that stand out in storytelling, but like the rest, not really. Not at least not from unfortunately the colonist point of view. There's a bunch of stuff that is not from. The Western propaganda, I guess you would say. Like, there's a whole lot. The bad part of the history. There's a lot of.
I find it interesting how, like, yeah, people that are there color what is your folklore, what are your stories that you tell, and things like that. I love mythology and folklore, and I kind of
I
like
love it too.
I love picking up bits and pieces from all over, and like how similar a lot of the stories are as well. Because I mean, I personally feel like a lot of those kind of stories, like werewolves and vampires and things like that, there is a story or a folklore about that kind of thing across the entire world, and they're all very different.
Yeah.
but they're all,
Same
like,
thing with
rooted
dragons,
in
but
the
also
same-
like kind of the same.
yeah.
See, that's
I
the
was-
thing. It's like, how do we as a race all come to the same conclusion about something?
And I think
There's got to be an element of
I
truth
think
to
a
it.
lot of that is primal fears. So,
Mm.
like, anything with people that are undead is like that otherness of a corpse is strange to a human being because it's a person that's not a person anymore. So it's just like we make myths about what if they came to life and they were hot, like things like that. So I think it is just innate to people, like that they want again to tell those stories, and that it like almost transcends cultures, races,
Yeah.
and geographic borders, because it is just something that we as people, like, almost in our lizard brains have.
Yeah.
I do think there is. I don't know if you listened or you can't have listened or watched because the episodes when we're filming this has not dropped yet. But you should not watch because it's glitchy. You should listen to the second episode with Mimics and Misfits. We actually completely sober dived into the role that we think hallucinogenics played with spirituality and storytelling, and whether or not we did in fact see the monsters and things that we all have in common.
Oh,
So
that's
there's a
interesting.
great on the environmental side. You ever seen Vikings? That was was it a History Channel, I think.
I haven't, but yeah, I've heard of it.
They do that in that where what they would have called like magic and stuff that their story, they sort of show what they're seeing, but they also half show you what's actually happening and just what they're perceiving
Yeah.
and how those stories would have perhaps come out of that.
Yeah.
So
the
there's-
same with
there's-
like oracles in ancient Greece.
Mm.
They were just like teenage girls that were high as fuck.
Yeah,
Basically
yeah,
all it
That's
was.
literally what I
Yeah.
said. One of the things I
Yeah.
said in the other episode was that we talked very shortly about DMT, which is a hallucinogenic substance, but a lot of plant life in the area where we get a lot of our myths from is rich in DMT, and DMT is activated through oxygen. So a lot of the whoa, I have all these visions is like something's on fire next to them that's carrying rich DMT molecules at the same time.
Burning bush.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like the Oracle at Delphi was like, wasn't it proven that
It was like a sulfur vent.
a sulfur
or
vent
something.
that
Yeah.
the
See?
person was literally just like starved of oxygen and just hallucinating, like,
Yep,
oh,
100%.
great victory from the sky.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now-
Thanks.
Yeah, but there's a little bit of that, but I also think there's a little bit of like we know how much we're starting to understand now how much the things we don't remember from our youth impact us psychologically all the way through our nervous system. Even if we don't visualize those memories, like even though we blocked them out, we have like neurological responses to things that are similar to that. And I think there is a level of like passed down ancestry that is maybe we were high and saw gods, but also maybe there were monsters that we didn't have guns to fight with yet. And this is what we told the children who are now scared of this and retold it to that children and retold it to that children. So like it's the oral tradition of maybe it wasn't actually a werewolf. Maybe we just couldn't fight a regular wolf. And that's scary enough.
Regular wolves are big and scary, actually, in the wild.
Oh, this is a real tangent, but I just reminded. Did you see that thing recently? It was like a survey. They asked, they asked English and American people, what's the biggest animal they think they could win against in a fight without weapons.
Everybody's wrong. We can't win against
8%
a
of
bee.
people thought they could beat a bear. I was just like, what? Come on. You wouldn't stand a
You're
chance.
so
I
bad.
could beat it to the grave.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. I wouldn't even tangle with a goose. They're not even that big.
Well, to be fair, only about 65-70% of people thought they could win against a goose.
That's
Exactly.
uh,
Mess you up.
I think we found the topic for episode 3. So I'm not